Hello, everybody, and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are the Youngs. Hey, thanks for joining us this week. And my wife is laughing as we start this podcast because last week I said I'm Bethany. And I have taken more than a little bit of teasing about that.
One of my favorite moments in our podcasting history.
And it was just a delight to my heart that I could give such joy to my family to make fun of me about that.
Yes,
but
I nailed it today. Even your assistant.
Yes, I got it today. I'm right here today. I know who I am. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
So we got it.
Yeah.
But hey, thanks for joining us today. And what a blessing that so many of you just keep reaching out to us. Thank you for sharing, liking, and all of those things.
I got a couple of texts yesterday about the podcast, which was
we're just
awesome.
Very thankful for all of that. So very thankful. But what we want to do today is just remind you that it's easy to reach out to us, and we would be honored if you did at any time.
Yes.
And so if you have a question you'd like to hear us talk about, something you've wondered about, or just whatever, you feel free to reach out. If it's something personal, we'll answer you personally. It may be something we can use on the podcast.
Yes.
And we certainly would love to hear your input in relation to that. One of the things that's coming up is that we have our producer, Jamin Baxter of Bax 5 Media. Jamin has a friend who is actually interested in supporting Keeping It Young podcast.
Wow.
And so that's a new territory for us. We've not done that yet. And so that'll be coming. That's kind of a new direction there. And it may be even that you would like to have a part in that. I don't know.
That's really cool.
And so
really awesome.
That's all new to us. We weren't thinking that way necessarily, but so this is a new thing coming up. Just a little bit of a difference there. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. We have been talking for the last 2 weeks about putting technology in its proper place.
Right.
We've titled this series, Using Technology Wisely in Our Homes. And what we wanted to make very clear is that we are not against technology.
No, we're not off grid.
We
Sometimes I wish we were.
we are surrounded by it. And, when we think technology, it's easy to think in terms of the iPad, the iPhone, the computer, the cell phone. All of those things come into play, but technology is everywhere. It's in our kitchen, our microwave, our refrigerator is technology.
Yes, my oven.
And the oven. And one of the things I remember is that when I was a kid, my grandmother, she's passed now, but my grandmother always cooked on a wood stove. And my mother has said more than a few times that my grandmother was one of the best cooks she ever met until she got an electric oven. And that the point being was that her technology, when the new technology came along, it threw her, and she never could quite learn how to use that technology the way that I remember her cooking when I was a little boy.
Wow.
And so I
can't even imagine.
I even recognize
Little House in the Prairie style.
No kidding. Isn't that strange to even think about?
It is.
And so technology's everywhere. It's in our car. I don't know how many times now I'm driving, and when you pass some cars, they've got the new technology that signals in the mirror that there's a car beside you, and it corrects you if you go too far over the line.
Yeah.
We are just
vibrates
surrounded.
At you.
That's right. Technology is everywhere, and it has been such a blessing. And so what we did the first episode together regarding this, we talked to you about the key words of better and balanced and best.
Yes.
And we talked about how to keep technology in its proper place, what it looks like as opposed to what it looks like if it's out of place.
Right.
And then we went to part 2. And remember the stat that we gave you, 78% of families believe it is more challenging to raise kids today than it was previously.
Right.
And the top of that list for reasons why is always technology.
Yes.
And so we talked about last week, we needing nudges. That was a fun one, not fudges, but nudges. And we need discipline. And we need choices. But today, we want to start. So let's get started on today's episode here in part 3 of Using Technology Wisely. And we're going to define technology. We just thought we ought to stop here and give it a definition. And so there's several ways you can define
Something
it.
that rules your life.
There you go. We can define it from the past, all right? And in the past, we found this. Technology in the past helped us with tasks, usually in specific places. And so in years gone by, technology would have been described with the word tools.
Yes.
So a hammer was invented, and a better hammer. And they were tools that made our work easy, easier. Tools that made our work easier. There's the right word. And typically the thing about technology in those days was you left it.
Right.
So, and you went to the kitchen and, you cooked on your wood stove and then you walked out. You left it. You left your technology in the kitchen.
Right.
Or you went to work and you used the new technology, or you went to the barn and you milked with the new milkers.
Right.
But you left it all. It was something that would have been described in years gone by as inventions more than anything else.
Right. A tool, an invention.
A refrigerator, oven. I mentioned my grandmother already,
Yes.
who cooked on a wood stove but couldn't cook on an electric one. The technology was beyond her.
Right.
Which is just so weird to think about. I remember when we were kids, and I was just a little boy when I remember my mom would do laundry outside on a ringer. Is that what they called them? A ringer washer?
A ringer washer.
And one of the things I remember then, too, we didn't have the speakers or anything, but I remember my mom singing while she worked. And no matter where I was on our little farm, I could hear Mom singing quite often. Kids would play down in the woods and in the valleys there, and we would hear Mom singing.
Right.
And technology has just changed all that. So in the past, it would have been defined as something that helped us with tasks.
Right.
And in
just
the present,
to make life easier. Right.
In the present, it doesn't help us with tasks. It's designed to do our tasks. And so that rather than having to pay attention as much in the car, my car is designed to correct any error.
Right. And tell you when to turn,
Yeah,
how far
so
to go.
Yes. And when we first started traveling in evangelism, my goodness, trying to find churches was like, wow. I don't know how many hours.
We had this thing called a map.
Yeah, I'd get out the map and
Rand
here we
McNally
are.
Atlas.
And we would write it down.
Yes.
And I remember how exciting we were when, was it MapQuest that came along and you could print off.
Yes.
You're going to go 13 miles to exit 97 and you're going to turn right and go 12 miles. And those were just so many. So they actually made our task easier, but then we come along and my new phone does the task for me. Right. All I got to do is say, take me to such and such place.
And it does.
And most of the time, it takes me to such and such place.
Yes. Every once in a while.
Just this past weekend, we were using this wonderful tool of technology, and it told me to turn right. And I thought, oh, okay. There was an accident on the interstate, and traffic was backed up for quite some miles.
Right.
So it routed me off of an exit and took me back to the interstate north of the accident.
Right.
But in the process of that, it told me we were on a certain highway, and it had me turn right. And then it had me turn left, and it had me turn left again, and it brought us back out to the same highway.
Right.
So
was no help.
We had just taken a little diversion out through the country.
It was pretty.
It was a pretty day, and we enjoyed that. So one of the things that we know today is that technology does tasks.
Yes.
And one of the things we found as we read the book, The TechWise Family,
yes,
is that he did point out that technology now is everywhere. And this is interesting. He said it is in our bodies, drugs, hormone therapy, all of that is a result of technology.
Right.
It was in 2004. I think we've already given you this on the previous episodes. 93% of urine samples showed BPA in the blood from plastics. So technology is in our bodies. And one of the things, and I want to be careful how we say this, but I thought it was interesting, is that the author pointed out that technology is actually in the most private and intimate part of our life, in the bedroom relation of a husband and a wife, in the form of contraceptives. 77% of couples today claim to use that in some form. That's technology.
Yes.
And our forefathers would not have had access to that kind of technology. And it's certainly true in our search for information.
Oh, yes. What did we do before Google?
When we were in college, we would go to the library. And one thing our kids have never done, our kids have never had to go to the card catalog. Or the card, is it card file? That's what we call it.
They have never had to do a card file because there have always been computers in the libraries since they've come along.
And we had to go in, and if you wanted to find a topic, you'd look it up and pull the card.
I loved the card file.
And isn't that amazing?
I loved it.
I did too. I enjoyed going through that and researching that.
I do not like the library computers. To me, it's harder to find things because it brings up anything that mentions that word in the title and things that aren't helpful.
Yeah, and most of it is not necessarily there, so it's a distraction as much as a help there. So it's everywhere. And when we first started getting, I remember when we first started having access to the internet, that we at those days had to go online, we would call it. I'm going to go online.
Right. It took longer.
Do you remember how many times I'd have to go to the church office and find a place to plug in a phone line, and it would make the whirring sound?
Yes, and just to retrieve your email, remember all of the noises that AOL used to make when you were retrieving your email.
And then we had that little famous saying, you've got mail.
Yes.
and all of that. So it's just that technology is everywhere. It does tasks for us. It is everywhere, and it is actually easy.
Oh, yes.
Technology is easy. Because of technology, I frequently drive to an airport, and I don't think about it at all. I check in luggage. I go through a security place. I sit down.
Everything computerized. Yes.
They call, my particular group. I get on a plane. I sit in my seat, and the next thing you know, I'm 30,000 feet in the air.
Right.
I don't even think about it. And wonder what our forefathers would have thought if they knew that we were going to do that. If they could have thought about the fact that we're going to get on a plane and in the East Coast and be on the West Coast in a matter of hours, it would have stunned them.
Yes.
And so technology is an amazing thing, and it is inventions. It is inventions that help us make life easier.
Right.
And obviously it's here to stay.
Yes.
And it's moving faster all the time. So here's what we want to do. We want to take these next few weeks and just try to, in the TechWise family book that we read, he gave 10 commitments that their family made. And Bethany and I recommend this book to you.
Absolutely.
You may not agree with everything in it. You may not do everything in it.
Oh, right.
But it really made us think. It made us stop and think, how are we doing? In fact, our kids, we told the kids we were going to listen to his daughter's book.
Right, My TechWise Life.
And we're doing that as we travel.
Yes.
And when we did that, my son said, my 17-year-old, he said, is this kind of a passive-aggressive way of trying to tell us things have to change?
We said, no, we're not passive-aggressive. We will
if
tell you
if we want it changed, you will change because we'll make it happen.
Yes.
And it just kind of made me chuckle.
And we had a little meeting last night about some technology that about the use of technology and some things we'd like to do differently.
Yeah, one of the things the iPhone does is it tells us how much time we're giving.
Yes.
And we realized that all of us were giving a lot of time, too much. So I limited the children. I set some restrictions, and I asked them to agree to do it.
Right.
And I don't know if they would totally have done it, but they agreed to be on board.
Yeah.
And so we limited only so much time per day to game.
Right. They both responded beautifully.
They were so positive about it. In fact, we talked about it, and then after we talked about it, we were busy because we were getting ready for a revival service last night.
Yes.
And then we went to revival service, and we had some folks that came. We did some counseling afterwards.
Yes.
And then after that, I got back to the RV here on the church property, and my son said, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to walk the dog. Here's my phone for you to make those adjustments." Go ahead and make
those changes, yes.
And then he came back in and he said, "Did you by chance change this? And if so, could we do this?" So it actually made a good conversation.
Right.
And I assured him that if I made a change there and you're wanting to adjust something, all you got to do is come talk. We'll talk about it.
Right.
And so it connected us to our children.
Yes.
This book.
Good.
So we're not going to give you the 10 commitments he gave you, but we just kind of sat down and thought through some things that we've done and want to do.
Right.
And so we thought we'd share those with you.
Goals that we have.
So let's get started on that. We've got about maybe 10 more minutes here today. Let's start with the first one. These are just some commitments that we want to make, that we would like to use in our family and that we strive towards. And here's the first one. We want to grow together as a family. We don't want to just wing raising children.
No.
And we don't want to just get in the habit of, I come home and turn the TV on, sit in front of the TV, and the kids come home and turn the phone on, and we're just
right. Everybody's got in earbuds. Everybody's scrolling.
So we want to grow. And you that have children, what you know is that there'd be many things you want your kids to know, but we've tried to sum things up in two ways. We want our kids to have wisdom, and we want our kids to have character.
Yes.
And wisdom, is knowing what is right in various situations of life. It's the Bible calls it understanding.
Right.
And one of the verses that I was thinking about is Proverbs 18:2, and that's the verse that says, "The fool has no pleasure in understanding." It's a mark of wisdom when you understand life.
Right.
And I just, off the top of our head here, can you think of anything your mom and dad did to help you have wisdom, to help you have understanding?
Well, of course, there were rules in our family that we had to follow that growing up, I would not have understood or even liked. But looking back, I know that they were just developing wisdom in my life, giving me cautions that made me stop and think before I would do something that would have been out of the realm of doing right. I think also my parents were careful about TV in a different way than we are. We did have television growing up, and we were allowed to watch certain shows, but they also would say, no, we're not going to watch that, and this is why. I know your friends watch that, but you're not going to watch it, and this is why. And so that would develop wisdom.
I can hear your mom saying that.
Yes. Yes.
I could so hear
different
her saying
things
that.
like that to
Sure.
develop wisdom.
And the thing is that you moms and dads, I'm sure you know this, but when your kids are smaller, they depend on your wisdom
Yes.
because they don't have wisdom and understanding.
Right.
And so we have to, if you have little ones in your house, they're not going to know what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
They have to learn that.
Right.
And we have to train them. That's why we have family devotions. That's why we continually, I don't remember where we got this statement from now, but somewhere along the way we were
Friends
with some
of ours.
friends, and they would say to their kids, do a wisdom check, please.
Yes,
It's
please do a
time to do a
wisdom
wisdom check.
Yes.
And that became a very valuable statement for our family. We have
Yes.
3 boys and 2 girls. And, sometimes we, as kids, they're just not thinking.
Right.
But we would often, could just put a hand on his shoulder and say, hey, do a wisdom check.
Right.
Which was a way of training our children to begin that process of developing wisdom on their own.
Yes.
Because the goal is that you don't want to have a 15-year-old that you have to absolutely tell them everything that's right and everything that's wrong.
Right. You want them to already be walking in wisdom by the time they're teenagers.
The goal we have is that our kids be walking in wisdom on their own.
Yes. And one of the things that I just thought of is after I went to college, my parents were pretty strict, and we did still have rules because I was still part of their household. But they would, if I would bring something up, well, why can't I do this? Well, why can't I go there with these people? Then we would have a conversation, and they wanted me to develop a strong stance based on the Word of God, wisdom based on the Word of God, instead of them just saying, well, because I said so. So by the time I was 18 to 22, they were saying, well, what does the Word of God say? Well, let's look at this together. And how can you be wise in this situation and not ruin your testimony or ruin your life? And so that was very valuable. And that's what we try to do with our children too. Yeah. And specifically what we're talking about is technology. So you were talking about how that a small child would not have wisdom on their own to choose right, specifically with technology. So would you say that a small child needs a lot of parental oversight when it comes to their technology
Absolutely.
use?
And if, as we read through this book, The TechWise Family, one of the things that I thought was amazing is they had a commitment in their life that their children could not have screens until they were age double digits.
Right, till they were 10.
And so once they were 10, then they could use screens. And one of the things he said in the book that I thought was very interesting is he said that we are in an educational culture right now that says our kids have to learn to use computers. And so, when I was in school, we were starting that coding. I remember having a class in which we were learning to write code and put computer programs together. That was all a very beginning, early stage.
Oh, wow. See, my little Christian school didn't have that.
But computers were so new. Nobody had one.
Oh, no.
It's just we were learning
Nobody
to
had
write. And
a laptop.
I remember when we got an Atari that had an access to some kind of computer system or something, and it was so minimal. There was just very few things you could do with it, but it was kind of cool to write some codes and figure out how to make it do different things and all of that kind of stuff. But then, time goes on, and now we have children that our schools hand kindergarten. There's
iPads.
We got to train them how to use it.
Right.
But what the author said in the book was this. He said, why are we giving the children iPads? Hand any child an iPad, and they will know more about that iPad and how to use it in a matter of moments.
Right.
Than
More
you as
than
an adult will know.
Right.
And I don't know how many times I've said to my teenagers, hey, can you help me this?
Oh, yes.
Or my charity said to me the other day, Dad, why are you doing it that way? Do it this way.
It is
and she
amazing.
reached around me, touched my phone, and I was like, I didn't know my phone could do that.
Right.
And she's never had a class on it.
No.
It just, she knows how to use an iPhone.
Right.
And we're
They've
so
just grown
careful.
up with it.
And she actually just recently had the privilege to start using one. So this is totally new to her.
Yes.
She's 12.
Right.
And yet she's already beyond where I am in her understanding of how it works and little, tips and shortcuts.
And tweaks,
It's so amazing.
It is amazing.
And so the point being here, this first commitment we have, we want to grow together as a family. Technology can distract you.
Yes.
Everybody does their own little thing, but we want our children to grow in wisdom.
Right.
And so we can't allow the technology to destroy wisdom.
And, you know, this is such a little thing. I see moms in the grocery store all the time, and this is not a wrong thing. So if you do this, please don't feel convicted or whatever. But moms all the time are handing their child, a very small child, I'm talking like a toddler or a preschooler, their iPhone or their iPad to watch a movie while they do grocery shopping. Mm-hmm. Now, I do understand that grocery shopping with a baby and a toddler is very difficult. I have done it in all stages of life, and it can be very difficult. But there are also sweet conversations that you're missing out on if you're constantly, I mean, I understand it's nap time, the child needs to eat, and you still have to stop at Walmart before you can get home. Maybe the best thing to do would to, hand them an iPhone with an episode of Curious George or something. I don't know. But
just practical.
Yes, just be practical about it. But at other times, have a conversation. Point out colors, point out numbers, point out letters, and you can have that sweet connection with your baby.
And I remember when we would go together to the grocery store, and I would push the shopping cart.
Yes.
I'm a Tennessean, so I almost said buggy.
Buggy.
And as I would push the buggy or the shopping cart with the kids, we would have conversations, and we would learn colors, and we would learn steps, and we would do counting.
And we would sing.
And it turned into a time where the kids were growing in wisdom about what is this, what is that.
And growing together as a family.
One of the things that's happened in our technologically distracted culture is that we don't connect anymore. But wisdom, knowing what is right in various situations of life, does not occur by accident.
No.
And technology can ruin that. But it's not only wisdom. We do want our kids to have character. And
yes.
I learned this from actually our friend Bill Rice III, Dr. Bill Rice III, in one of his sermons said that character is the ability to do right regardless of inward yearnings, outward pressures, or eventual outcomes. And that's something it takes about 18 years to teach our children.
Or longer.
That, you know what, you may want to do wrong, but if you have wisdom and character, it will help you to do right.
Right.
And you may have friends that are pressuring you to do wrong, but if you have wisdom and character, you can stand against those wrong friends and influences for that which is right.
Right.
And so that's really good. Now, we're going to be out of time here in just a moment. This is difficult. You moms and dads that are listening know that this is difficult.
Developing wisdom and
character is difficult. And I'm going to say this. It's why we as parents struggle and fail here. Because it's just tough. It is tough to raise children to have character and wisdom.
Especially in the realm of technology, because it is so prevalent in the school and in all of their friends' houses.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's absolutely true. And so what I found out was that if it's difficult early, it's hard to take the time to talk to the children in the grocery store rather than...
Yes.
And we were eating the other night. My wife and I stopped and grabbed a meal on a trip we were on. And the family beside us had a little boy that said nothing at all during the meal. Nothing. We were there probably 45 minutes easily, maybe an hour.
Right.
He never said a word because the entire time he was there, he had a device in his hands. He was completely unengaged. I'm not even sure he ate.
His dad had to just keep feeding him bites.
So his dad would put food in his mouth.
So he wouldn't even look at his father. His dad would just
He had no
feed him.
idea what he was eating.
Yes.
Because he was so engaged in that. And I understand that it's so easy, but if we don't do the difficult thing early to make it easy later, if we do the difficult thing, if we do the easy thing early, it becomes difficult later.
Yes.
So if you got little ones, as hard as it is, now's the time to start developing standards of wisdom and character, and don't allow technology to distract you from that.
Right.
So we're about out of time here. Here's a few quotes from the book. For technology, with all its gifts, poses one of the greatest threats ever conceived by human society to the formation of wise, courageous persons that real family and real community are all about. I thought that was a loaded statement.
Yes, it is.
That technology poses one of the greatest threats ever consumed by human society.
Conceived.
And what did I say?
Consumed.
Conceived.
We do consume technology,
but
though,
the word there is conceived. And give us that next quote there, that last one.
Technology is not bad, but is only good if it can help us become the persons we were meant to be.
Now close this session with that one. Technology is not bad at all.
No.
But it is only good if it can help us become the persons we were meant to be.
Right.
God designed us to thrive.
I think of the words that we did in the first episode about technology then, about better, balanced, and best.
Yes.
is this technology what I'm using it for right now? Is it making me better? Is it balancing out my life? Is it best?
Yes.
Is this the best way to learn about a recipe?
And as moms and dads, we've got to evaluate that in our children.
Right.
Is this better? Is it balanced? Is it helping them to be better and balanced? Is this best for my children?
Yes.
And really, we're not against it. I hope you know that. We're not against it.
No, we use it every day.
We use it every day, multiple ways.
Yes.
But unless we keep it in balance and choose better and best over everything else, we'll lose this battle.
Yes.
For sure. Mm-hmm. So what are we talking about? We're talking about using technology wisely in our family.
Yes.
And so today and next week and maybe a week after that, we're just challenging you with a few commitments we've made. And the first commitment we've made is we want to grow together as a family.
Yes.
That's wisdom
and character.
Any further thoughts before we say goodbye?
I think we should save the rest of it for later.
Okay, let's do that. Hey, we're glad you joined us today.
Yes, thank you for
thank you so much
listening.
for being a part of our lives and a part of our podcast.
Yes.
We are grateful. Have a great day.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production. All rights reserved.